Jonathan Fowers didn't feel the pain immediately. He felt the betrayal first. It was in the silence, in the way no one spoke as they held him down, in the way no one hesitated. He lay on the cold concrete near the riverbank, his vision blurred, his body refusing to respond. His expensive suit was soaked with blood and river water. His hands trembled weakly. He tried to move, failed. Then he heard the voice, calm, familiar, his brother. "Finish it." Jonathan's heart stopped. Not from injury, from realization. He forced his eyes open. Through the darkness, he saw Raphael standing above him, watching him, not with anger, with certainty. Jonathan tried to speak. His mouth moved. No sound came out. His brother stepped closer, kneeled beside him, and whispered, "You should have stayed weak." Jonathan felt hands grab his shoulders, dragging him closer to the river. The cold air hit his skin. The sound of water grew louder. His body screamed to fight. But he couldn't. He wasn't strong anymore. Not here. Not now. Not betrayed like this. "Goodbye, brother." And then they pushed him. The water swallowed him instantly. Cold, violent, final. Jonathan Fowers disappeared beneath the surface, and the world moved on without him. Darkness had no shape, no time, no mercy. Jonathan didn't know how long he sank. Seconds, minutes, forever. His lungs burned, his body weakened, his mind slipped. He thought of everything he had built. Every sacrifice, every night he worked while others slept, every moment he trusted his brother, and how easily it ended, not in a boardroom, not in power, but in silence, in water, forgotten. His last breath escaped his body, and then, nothing. Light returned slowly. Not from above, from somewhere beside him. Pressure on his chest, hands, a voice, distant, desperate, "Breathe." His body convulsed violently. Water exploded from his lungs. Pain returned. Life returned. Jonathan gasped. Air never felt so violent, so heavy, so real. He opened his eyes briefly, saw a woman's face, strained, determined, fearless. Then darkness took him again. Jonathan woke to the sound of wind moving through broken wood. His body lay on something hard, uncomfortable, unfamiliar. He opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above him was cracked wood, old, fragile. Not his world, not his life. He tried to move. Pain shot through his ribs. His chest tightened. He collapsed back down. "You're awake," a voice said softly. He turned his head. The woman from the river sat beside him. She wasn't dressed like anyone from his world. Her clothes were worn, simple, her hands rough, her eyes strong. "You shouldn't move yet," she said. Jonathan struggled to speak. "Where?" His voice broke. She leaned closer. Safe. He didn't know what that meant anymore. Days passed. Jonathan learned slowly. He was in the favela, saved by a woman named Maria. She had found him near the riverbank early in the morning, broken, bleeding, left to die. She had carried him home herself, alone. She didn't know who he was. She didn't ask. She simply saved him. One afternoon, she brought a small radio into the room. She turned it on. Business magnate Jonathan Frouse was confirmed dead late last night. Jonathan froze. His brother, Raphael Frouse, has assumed leadership of Frouse Holdings. His chest tightened. His brother had already replaced him. His life, his empire, his existence, gone. Officially, Jonathan Farris was dead, and the world accepted it. Maria watched him carefully. She saw the pain in his eyes, not physical pain, something deeper, something broken. "You lost everything," she said quietly. Jonathan looked at her. For the first time, someone saw the truth. Not the billionaire, not the power, just the man. "Yes," he whispered, but inside, something else was growing. Not weakness, not fear. Something far more dangerous. Purpose. Jonathan's body healed slowly. Not like the kind of recovery he used to buy with private doctors in quiet rooms. This was a different kind of healing. It came with bruises that never fully faded, with nights where his ribs ached so badly he couldn't breathe without wincing, with a constant fear that if he stood too fast, the world would tilt and swallow him again. Maria didn't pamper him. She didn't treat him like a guest. She treated him like a human being who had survived something ugly. That meant food when he needed strength, water when his throat burned, and silence when he didn't have words. At first, he hated the silence. In his world, silence was weakness. Here, silence was respect. On the 7th day, Maria left early as usual. Jonathan heard the door close, then the long quiet of a house that held nothing expensive, only what was necessary. A small table. A battered kettle. Two mismatched cups, a thin mattress, a plastic chair, a corner where Maria kept her cleaning supplies like a soldier keeping weapons. Jonathan tried to sit up on his own. Pain flared along his side. He held his breath until it passed. Then he forced himself to swing his legs off the bed. His feet touched the floor. For a second, he felt strong until his knees buckled and he crashed down, catching himself on the table. The cup rattled, water spilled. He stared at the mess, breathing hard. This was what being powerless looked like. Not poverty, not hunger, but the moment your body refuses you. The moment your name means nothing. The moment the world can do whatever it wants to you, and you cannot stop it. Jonathan whispered to himself, voice barely audible. Not again. He didn't know what he meant, but he meant it. When Maria came back that evening, she saw the bruises on his hands. She didn't ask. She only said, "You tried." Jonathan didn't deny it. He swallowed and said, "I have to walk." Maria looked at him, her eyes steady. Why? Because if he couldn't walk, he couldn't leave. And if he couldn't leave, Raphael had already won. Jonathan forced out a lie that sounded like truth. "Because I don't want to die in this bed." Maria nodded once, as if she understood more than she should. Then she placed a hand on the back of the plastic chair and pushed it toward him. "Tomorrow." "We try again. Not I'll help you, not you'll be okay. Just tomorrow." That was how people survived here, one day at a time. The next week became a ritual of pain and stubbornness. Maria would put the chair beside him. He would stand. His legs would shake. His breath would cut short. He would take 1 step, 2 steps, 3, then collapse. Maria would catch him if she could. If she couldn't, she'd sit beside him without pity. She never once said, "Poor you." She said, "Again." And somehow that was more mercy than he had ever received in boardrooms full of men who smiled while they sharpened knives. On the 12th day, Jonathan made it to the doorway without falling. He stood there, gripping the frame, staring out at the favela. It wasn't what outsiders imagined. It wasn't just chaos. It was life compressed into narrow streets and loud conversations. Mothers calling kids inside. Men carrying bricks up stairways, a teenager selling pastries from a tray, a dog sleeping in the shade like it owned the world. Everything was close, everything was visible. In Jonathan's world, suffering was hidden behind walls. Here it lived in the open, and still people laughed. That confused him more than anything. He turned slightly, dizzy, and whispered, "How do you do this?" Maria didn't even look up from folding clothes. "Do what? Live like this?" Maria finally looked at him. Her face didn't soften, it hardened like a shield. "You think this is living?" Jonathan didn't answer. Maria stepped closer. "You want to know what living is?" She pointed at the street. "Living is waking up knowing nobody will save you. And still getting up, still working. Still feeding someone else before you feed yourself." Her voice dropped, quiet but sharp. Living is getting robbed and going back to work the next day because your kids still need to eat. Jonathan felt his throat tighten. Maria's eyes held his. And living is not asking why the world is unfair, because the world doesn't answer. Then she turned away, as if that was all. But Jonathan felt something break open inside him. He had been rich long enough to believe the world could be negotiated with. Maria had never had that illusion. That night, Jonathan didn't sleep. Not because of pain, because of guilt, because of clarity, because of the terrifying truth he couldn't escape. He had lived his entire life protected by money, and still, he had lost everything, while Maria, with nothing, had saved him. He stared at the ceiling and whispered a name, Raphael. The name tasted like poison. 3 days later, Maria brought home a small, old radio. She placed it on the table like it was something sacred. Jonathan's pulse jumped. Maria turned it on. Static, then voices, news, business, politics, then Pharos Holdings announces a bold, new expansion. Jonathan froze. CEO Rafael Faraz described his late brother, Jonathan Faraz, as a visionary whose legacy will guide the company forward. Jonathan's hands clenched so hard, his fingernails bit into his skin. Raphael was using his name like a marketing tool, using his death like fuel. Maria watched Jonathan carefully. Not pity, study, late brother, she said softly. Jonathan didn't answer, because answering would have meant admitting the truth, that he wasn't Daniel, that he was the dead man everyone had already mourned. He swallowed, voice low. He killed me. Maria didn't flinch, not shock, not disbelief. As if the world had already taught her what families were capable of. She asked one question, "Do you want revenge?" Jonathan hesitated, because revenge had always sounded childish in his world, a word for people who couldn't win legally. But now, legal didn't exist for him. He was dead. He had no court, no contract, no protection. Only a beating heart and a memory of water. Jonathan whispered, "I want my life back." Maria's eyes narrowed. "That's not revenge." Jonathan looked at her. "What is?" Maria leaned in, voice calm and lethal. "Revenge is making him feel what you felt." A pause. Powerless. Jonathan felt his stomach twist. Maria straightened. "But revenge is expensive." Jonathan almost laughed. "Not for me." Maria looked at him like he was a child. "You don't have money anymore." Jonathan went quiet, because it was true. Maria stepped back. "So if you want revenge, you'll need something stronger than money." Jonathan asked, "What?" Maria answered with one word, "Patience." The days after that changed. Not because Jonathan became stronger, but because his mind became sharper. He began to ask questions, not about revenge, about survival. Who controls the favela? Who protects people? Who harms them? Where do goods come in? Where do they disappear? Maria didn't answer everything, but she introduced him to someone. A man named Paolo. Paolo wasn't powerful in the way Raphael was. He didn't own companies. He didn't wear a watch worth a car. But he knew everyone. He had eyes everywhere. He spoke softly and listened more than he talked. When Maria told him Jonathan needed work, Paolo didn't ask for a resume. He looked Jonathan up and down and said, "You can carry bricks." Jonathan nodded. Paolo smiled faintly. "Then you can eat." That was the economy here, not credit. Not reputation, usefulness. Jonathan started working construction. At first his body rebelled, his hands blistered, his back screamed. He collapsed at night and woke up still exhausted. But something happened around the second week. He lifted a heavy bag of cement and realized his arms didn't shake. He climbed the steps and realized his breath didn't collapse. He carried wood across a roof and realized he wasn't afraid of falling anymore. He had already fallen. He had already drowned. Everything else was smaller. One evening, after work, Paolo handed him a bottle of water and asked, casually, "So what did you do before you died?" Jonathan froze. Paolo's eyes stayed calm. He didn't look accusing. He looked curious. Jonathan didn't answer. Paolo nodded, as if the silence was enough. People don't end up in Maria's house unless the world threw them away, Paolo said. Then he added, quieter, and Maria doesn't save people unless she sees something worth saving. Jonathan stared at the ground. Paolo walked away, leaving him with words that felt like a debt. That night, Maria found Jonathan sitting outside, staring at the river in the distance, like it was calling him. "You're leaving soon," she said. Jonathan didn't deny it. "Yes." Maria's voice stayed even. "If you go back, they'll try again." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "I know," Maria asked. "So why go?" Jonathan looked at her, and for the first time, he said something true. "Because if I don't, he wins forever." Maria stepped closer. "What do you want, Daniel?" Jonathan swallowed. His voice was low and steady. "I want him to lose everything." Maria stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Then you need to stop thinking like a billionaire." Jonathan frowned. "And think like what?" Maria answered, quiet but absolute. "A man who has nothing to lose." That was the moment the plan truly began. Not on paper, not in speeches, in Jonathan's head. He understood now. If he returned as Jonathan Ferris, Raphael would kill him again, so he needed to return as someone else. Someone invisible. Someone the Empire would never see coming. A ghost. A shadow. A rumor. He needed to build a second life, one Raphael couldn't trace. He needed access. He needed leverage. He needed proof. And he needed a way to destroy Raphael without ever stepping into a courtroom. Because the courtroom belonged to Raphael now. The bank belonged to Raphael. The police belonged to Raphael. Everything Jonathan used to control belonged to the man who threw him into the river. Near midnight, Maria placed a small envelope on the table. Jonathan looked at it. "What is this?" Maria's eyes didn't blink. "Your first step." Jonathan opened it. Inside were two things, a cheap phone, and a handwritten list of names. Paolo's contacts, people who knew how money moved in the dark, people who knew how secrets stayed buried. Jonathan looked up slowly. Maria said, "If you're serious, don't come back here for help once you start." Jonathan's throat tightened. "Why are you doing this?" Maria's face didn't change, but her voice softened by 1 degree. "Because you don't get to die twice." Jonathan stared at her. And understood something that scared him more than Raphael ever had. Maria wasn't just saving him, She was shaping him. Jonathan Farris died in the river, but the man who stood up in the favela, who learned pain, hunger, humility and patience, was not a billionaire anymore. He was something Raphael could not buy off, something Raphael could not intimidate, something Raphael could not erase. A man with nothing left to lose, and everything left to take. Jonathan left before sunrise. The favela was quiet in that hour, between exhaustion and survival. No music, no shouting. No children running through the alleys, only the distant hum of the city waking up. He stood in Maria's doorway one last time. She didn't try to stop him. She didn't hug him. She didn't say goodbye. She simply handed him a small backpack. Inside was simple clothes, the cheap phone, and something else. Cash. Not much, but enough. Jonathan looked at her. "I'll pay you back." Maria shook her head. "You already will." Jonathan hesitated. "What if I fail?" Maria answered without hesitation. "Then, at least you didn't die on your knees." Jonathan nodded, and stepped out, not as Jonathan Farris, not as Daniel, but as something undefined, something unfinished, something dangerous. The city did not welcome him back. It ignored him. Cars passed, people walked, buildings stood tall and indifferent. The world had already buried him. That was his greatest weapon, because dead men weren't watched. Dead men weren't tracked. Dead men weren't expected. His first step was information. Not revenge, information. He went to places Jonathan Farris would never have entered. Small internet cafes, cheap diners, crowded bus stations, places where faces blended together. He used Paolo's contacts carefully, never revealing too much, never asking directly, just listening, learning, waiting. He discovered what he already suspected. Raphael hadn't just taken control, he had reshaped everything. Employees loyal to Jonathan were gone, fired, replaced, silenced, contracts rewritten, ownership transferred. Jonathan Farris had been erased with surgical precision, like he had never existed. Jonathan stood across the street from Farris Holdings for the first time since his death. The building was unchanged, glass, steel, power. His name was still engraved on the front. Farris Holdings, but it wasn't his anymore. People walked in and out without hesitation, without fear. Without knowing what had been done to build it. Jonathan watched Raphael exit the building. Expensive suit, perfect posture, confidence untouched. He looked healthy, untouched by guilt, untouched by consequence. Jonathan didn't feel anger. He felt clarity, because anger made mistakes. Clarity made results. Jonathan didn't approach, not yet. He needed something first. Access, not physical access, system access. He needed to get inside Raphael's world without being seen. He bought a cheap laptop, old, slow, untraceable. He spent nights in public places using open networks. watching, studying Raphael's business, patterns, investments, partnerships, weaknesses. He remembered everything from before. Passwords Raphael reused, people Raphael trusted too easily, systems Raphael never believed could turn against him, because Raphael believed Jonathan was dead, and Raphael had never respected anyone else enough to be careful. One night, Jonathan gained access to an internal company database. Not enough to control, enough to observe. Financial records, internal communications, private meetings, secrets. He read every detail, every betrayal, every lie Raphael had told to secure his position. Jonathan realized something important. Raphael hadn't just stolen the company, he was bleeding it, making short-term decisions, sacrificing long-term stability. Because Raphael wasn't building an empire, he was consuming it. Jonathan smiled faintly. Raphael was already destroying himself. Jonathan just needed to accelerate it. Weeks passed. Jonathan made small moves, invisible moves, a delayed transfer here, a cancelled authorization there, tiny disruptions. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. Just enough to create doubt, confusion, instability. Inside Pharos Holdings, Raphael noticed. At first he blamed employees, fired them, replaced them. But the problems continued. Because the enemy wasn't inside the company. The enemy was already everywhere. Jonathan watched Raphael from a distance one afternoon. Raphael stood outside the building, yelling into his phone, angry, frustrated, losing control. Jonathan felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not yet. Understanding, because he had stood exactly there once, believing he controlled everything. Believing power was permanent, believing betrayal happened to weaker men. He had been wrong. And now Raphael was wrong too. He just didn't know it yet. Jonathan returned to his small rented room that night. Nothing luxurious, nothing comfortable, but it was his, earned, not inherited, not stolen. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. He barely recognized himself. Thinner, harder, quieter. His eyes didn't belong to the billionaire anymore. They belonged to a survivor. He whispered to his reflection, "You took everything from me." His voice didn't shake. And now I take everything from you. He picked up the cheap phone Maria had given him. He typed one message to one of Polo's contacts, a man who specialized in anonymous financial movements. The message was simple: "I'm ready." He pressed send and knew there was no going back. Meanwhile, Raphael sat alone in his luxury office, staring at numbers that didn't make sense. Losses, errors, disruptions. He poured himself a drink. His hand trembled slightly. He didn't understand why. He had won, he had everything. So why did it feel like something was coming? Something inevitable, something patient, something he couldn't stop. Far away from that office, Jonathan Faraz sat in the dark, watching, waiting, becoming the ghost Raphael had created. Jonathan didn't need money anymore. He didn't need recognition. He didn't need permission. He had something far more dangerous: time, patience, and a man who had never learned how to survive without power. Rafael Fares stopped sleeping. At first, it was subtle. A single bad night, then two, then a week. He told himself it was stress, expansion pressure, leadership responsibility. That's what powerful men told themselves when control started slipping. They called it stress. They never called it fear. It began with numbers that didn't obey him anymore. Transfers that failed without explanation. Accounts that locked themselves. Investments that suddenly turned against him. Nothing dramatic, nothing visible, but enough. Enough to disturb the illusion of absolute control. "Find out what's happening," Rafael ordered his financial director. The man nodded nervously. Days later, he returned. "We found nothing." Rafael's voice turned cold. "That's not an answer," the man swallowed. "It's the only one we have." Rafael stared at him, trying to decide whether incompetence or betrayal was more likely. Because in Rafael's world, failure didn't exist without intention. Someone was responsible. Someone always was. But there was no one. That was the problem. No emails. No external access logs. No internal sabotage. No visible enemy. Just damage. Invisible. Precise. Personal. One night, Rafael stood alone in his office, staring at the city. The same view Jonathan used to admire. The same office Jonathan used to own. Rafael held a glass of whiskey, untouched. He felt something he hadn't felt in years: vulnerability. He whispered to himself, "This isn't possible," because he had done everything right. He had removed Jonathan. He had secured control. He had erased the only man capable of challenging him. Jonathan was dead. He had watched him fall, watched him disappear beneath the water, watched him vanish. There had been no mistake. There could not have been. The first real crack appeared 3 days later. A small transaction. Almost invisible. $1. Transferred from an old company account. An account Rafael knew had been sealed. An account only one person had ever used. Jonathan. Rafael stared at the screen. His chest tightened. His fingers went cold. He checked again. The transaction was real. Timestamp verified. Authorization confirmed. Impossible. Rafael called his security team immediately. "Track this." Hours passed. No answers. The transaction couldn't be traced. No location. No device. No entry point. As if the system had authorized itself. As if Jonathan himself had reached from the grave. That night, Rafael didn't go home. He stayed in the office, watching, waiting, listening. To nothing. Because silence was worse than threats. Silence meant patience. Silence meant intelligence. Silence meant intention. 2 days later, the envelope arrived. No sender. No markings. Just his name. Rafael. written in clean, precise letters. His hands hesitated before opening it. Not from fear, from instinct, because some part of him already knew. He opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph. The river, the exact spot where Jonathan had fallen. On the back, written in black ink, "I remember everything." Raphael dropped the photograph. His heart began to race uncontrollably. His breathing became shallow. His mind rejected what his eyes confirmed. No, it wasn't possible. Jonathan was dead. He had to be. Because if he wasn't, then everything Raphael had built belonged to a man he had failed to kill. From that moment, Raphael changed. He became suspicious of everyone, every employee, every partner, every glance, every whisper. He installed more security, more surveillance, more control. But control didn't bring peace. It brought confirmation, because the more control he tried to enforce, the more powerless he felt. Meanwhile, Jonathan watched everything from shadows. From distance, from invisibility. He didn't rush. He didn't threaten directly. He allowed Raphael's mind to destroy itself, because fear was the most efficient weapon Jonathan had. Fear made men collapse faster than force ever could. Jonathan studied Raphael carefully, his routines, his habits, his weaknesses. Raphael had one fatal flaw. He believed power made him untouchable. Jonathan had believed the same thing once, until the river taught him otherwise. One evening, Jonathan stood across the street from Farris Holdings again, watching Raphael through the glass windows. Raphael looked older. Not physically, mentally. His posture had changed. His movements had lost certainty. Jonathan realized something important. Raphael wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of losing control. Jonathan whispered quietly, "You're starting to understand." Back in his apartment, Jonathan prepared the next step. Not destruction, exposure. He gathered documents, records, proof of Raphael's illegal takeover, proof of attempted murder, proof of fraud. Jonathan didn't want Raphael dead. Death was too simple, too quick, too merciful. Jonathan wanted Raphael alive. Alive to watch everything collapse, alive to feel what helplessness truly meant. Jonathan picked up his phone, typed a message, no signature, no name, just truth. He sent it, and knew Raphael would receive it, because there was nowhere Raphael could hide anymore. That night, Raphael's phone vibrated. He stared at the message. One sentence, 3 words. "I survived, brother." Raphael dropped the phone. His hands trembled uncontrollably. His greatest fear had become reality. Jonathan wasn't dead. Jonathan was coming. And this time, Raphael had nowhere to run. Raphael Faraz had taken his brother's life, his name, his empire, his future. But he had made one fatal mistake. He hadn't taken his brother's will to survive. And now, Jonathan Farrell's was coming back to take everything. Raphael didn't want to go, but he knew he had no choice. The message had contained only one thing, a location, the river. The same river where he had ended his brother's life. Or at least, where he believed he had. Raphael stood beside his car for several minutes before moving. His hands trembled slightly. He told himself it was anger, not fear. Never fear. But his body knew the truth before his mind accepted it. Somewhere, deep inside him, Raphael understood something he had spent months denying. The past had come back, and it wanted balance. The river was quiet that night, too quiet. The water moved slowly, reflecting the pale light of the moon, unchanged, unmoved, indifferent, just like it had been that night. Raphael stepped forward cautiously. His eyes searched the darkness. Nothing. No movement, no sound, only the river. He almost laughed, almost convinced himself it was a trick. That Jonathan was still dead, that this was just paranoia. Then you always did underestimate silence. The voice came from behind him. Raphael froze, his entire body locked in place. Because he knew that voice, he turned slowly and saw him. Jonathan, standing there, alive, real, unbroken. Not the man Raphael remembered, stronger, calmer, certain, like something the river itself had rebuilt. Raphael's mouth opened, but no words came out. His mind rejected the impossible. "You're dead," Raphael whispered. Jonathan tilted his head slightly. "You tried." Silence fell between them. Heavy, unavoidable. Raphael stepped backward, instinctively. "This isn't possible." Jonathan took one step forward, not aggressive, not rushed, controlled. "You stood right there," Jonathan said quietly. He pointed to the edge of the river. "You watched me drown." Raphael's breathing became uneven. Jonathan's voice didn't rise, didn't shake. That was what made it terrifying. "You took everything." A pause. "My name, my life, my future." Raphael tried to recover his authority, his arrogance, his control. "I built everything after you were gone," Raphael said defensively. Jonathan shook his head slowly. "No." Another step forward. "You inherited everything after you killed me." Raphael's voice cracked. "What do you want?" Jonathan didn't hesitate. "The truth." Raphael laughed weakly. "You think anyone will believe you?" Jonathan reached into his coat calmly. Pulled out an envelope, dropped it at Raphael's feet. Raphael hesitated, then picked it up. Inside were documents, financial records, security footage, signed confessions, every lie, every crime, every illegal transfer, every proof of Raphael's betrayal. Raphael's hands began to shake uncontrollably. Jonathan spoke quietly. "You didn't just try to kill me." A pause. "You exposed yourself." Raphael looked up, panic filling his eyes. Jonathan continued, "Everything you built is already gone." Raphael's world collapsed in that moment. Not from violence, from inevitability. You could have shared everything, Jonathan said. His voice carried no hatred, only truth. But you chose to destroy everything. Raphael's knees weakened. He dropped the envelope. You ruined me, Raphael whispered. Jonathan's eyes remained steady. You ruined yourself. Silence. The river moved beside them. As if it had waited for this moment, Jonathan stepped past Raphael, stopped beside him, close enough to remind him, You wanted me to feel powerless. A pause. Now you understand. Jonathan walked away, leaving Raphael alone, with nothing, exactly as intended. The news spread quickly. Raphael Faraz was arrested within days. Fraud, attempted murder, financial crimes. Everything Jonathan had uncovered came to light. The empire collapsed. Not in fire, not in chaos, but in truth. Because truth didn't need violence. Truth needed exposure. Jonathan didn't attend the hearings. He didn't watch the trial. He didn't care. Because his revenge had never been about watching Raphael fall. It had been about standing again. Months later, Jonathan stood at the entrance of the favela once more. The same place where he had been reborn, where he had learned what survival really meant. He walked slowly toward Maria's house, his heart calm, not empty, complete. He knocked. The door opened. Maria looked at him and smiled faintly. You came back. Jonathan nodded. I promised. She studied him carefully, not searching for the billionaire. Recognizing the survivor, you look different, she said. Jonathan answered honestly, I am. He stepped inside. The small house felt warmer than any mansion he had ever owned. Because it wasn't built with money, it was built with humanity. Jonathan looked around quietly. This was where he had learned everything that mattered. Not power, not wealth, not control, but strength, the kind no one could steal. He turned to Maria. You saved my life. Maria shook her head gently. No, she said. You chose to live. Jonathan understood now. The river had taken his past, but it had given him something greater. Perspective, truth, freedom. Jonathan Faraz had lost everything. His empire, his name, his identity. But in losing everything, he found the one thing no one could ever take again: himself.